everybody. I'm John Franklin, Head of Safety Promotion at EASA, and welcome to our latest podcast on conversation aviation as part of the discussion and the series where we're focusing particularly around occurrence reporting and safety culture. And in the last podcast, we talked to Pascal from Luxair about safety reporting and the process there. So now we're going to focus more on the context of just culture and organisational safety culture. And I'm joined by a great guest. Paul, maybe you can start by introducing yourself and then we can get into the discussion.
Yeah, hi, good day. And hi, John, and thanks for having me. So, my name is Paul Reuter. I am the European Cockpit Association, at the moment, interim vice president, and I'm also the professional affairs board director for ECA. And yeah, I've done quite a lot of stuff on just culture. I'm also chairman of APSI, the European Pilot Peer Support Initiative. And finally, I fly also for Luxair as a captain on the 737.
I know we've done a few panels together and conferences and events and things talking about just culture particularly, and I think at a kind of starting fundamental level of driving the safety management system of any organization is that it's all very well to have a regulation that says we should report occurrences, and it's very nice for any organization to have this aspiration that they would like their staff to report occurrences. But the reality of that means that if the staff don't trust the reporting system of the organization, then there's no fuel to feed the safety management system and the decision making of the organization, is there? And it's such an important thing. What kind of challenges have you seen in terms of just culture implementation? I know you've been involved for many years, but particularly since Regulation 376 on occurrence reporting came in, and I remember you were involved also in the implementation of the initial just culture policies there. What kind of challenges do you see from pilots in that context?
Well, I think the main challenge of just culture is for an organization is making it credible to the staff, to the frontline staff, especially. I think 376 was a great thing. It was great to have this just culture definition in the regulation. The problem that I see is that while every organization has a just culture declaration and they fulfill all the requirements, it's about trust. As a frontline staff, do I trust my organization enough to report that I made a mistake? Because yeah, we have two things. On one hand, we're working in a very dynamic, complex system with the human spread around the middle there, and so humans with their limitations, obviously, mistakes happen. I'll make a mistake, I'll forget something. Most mistakes get caught either by my colleague or by the system or by the technology, and nothing happens. But if we don't report these mistakes, we don't see where the system might fail next time. So basically what we have as an industry and as organizations, individuals, we have the potential to have quite big blind spots in what we do. On the other hand, we've been taught from kids up that mistakes are not good. If you make a mistake, you might get punished. So these two things in general kind of rub together, because that's how humans are. And so just culture is the first step to kind of create this safe space and this understanding that we need to have in the industry, that mistakes happen because we're humans. The system we designed is full of mistakes because it's been designed by humans. And we need to acknowledge that and then understand that we need to know about these mistakes, even if there's no consequence operationally or safety-wise. We need to learn from them. So we need to create an environment where people not only trust their organization that they can report without undue negative consequences on whatever, their livelihood, their career, or their well-being, but ideally we would create a system where people are eager to report because they understand the value of their reporting for making the system better and ultimately driving system safety and making their work better and safer as well.
And I think that's one of the key challenges. One of the favourite phrases I read quite regularly in different contexts is this concept that trust arrives on foot but leaves on horseback, and the fact that it takes a long time for an organisation to build trust, but it only takes one potentially foolish act of one person in an organization to suddenly make everybody stop. I remember many years ago hearing of an organization where it was a mistakes like this will no longer be tolerated type statement from an operational manager, and that all of a sudden all reporting on all things stopped. And I think that's the key thing, isn't it? It's how do you build an organization that has that learning mindset that says, right, there is value in this, and we want people to feed in and to report and to be part of that. And I think particularly, you talk about, I think mistakes is it, and anything where there's something negative, particularly when there's lots of operational pressure, I think there needs to be particular focus by operational organisations, and particularly for operational managers to say this is just part of us improving and learning, and not, oh my God, this is something terrible, it's caused a delay. And we focus on the outcome, if that makes sense. But I think we still see quite a bit of that sometimes, don't we?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because it's, the problem I see a lot with just culture is that, first of all, you can't regulate culture, but it's still nice that we have a definition. But that's the beginning. But what I see a lot, just culture being applied as an accountability matrix.
Yeah,
You have these really nice. There's something happening. You have the guy, and then you have this maze that the organization is going to go through. You have these different schemes where you go through and say, okay, is this like a normal mistake? Is this and it's much more than that. It's really much more than that. And indeed, and I just I haven't had time to read Amy Edmondson's latest book, with the science of learning to fail well. I think it's the right kind of wrong,
yeah,
where
that's
she
on
explained that.
my list ready to read.
Yeah, and we really need. I mean, this is really something we need to focus on in aviation, and it is we're a complex socioeconomic system, and mistakes happen all the time, and we need to prevent them from having consequences. We can't prevent the mistakes necessarily, and then we need to learn from them, and hopefully not only our organization, but we share it with the other organizations, which is what we do in aviation, which I think is a great thing. We can be competitors economically, but when it comes to safety, usually when we're in the same room, everybody's rooting for everyone. So we're
Yeah,
really trying to do that, and that is, and when and it's unfortunate that very often on the line in the day-to-day, grind of daily operations, this feeling and this atmosphere and this mindset, it's not, it's not dribbling down. But that's what we need to work on.
and certainly one thing I've seen, obviously over the last, well, over however many years, 20, 30 years and beyond, aviation continually, statistically at least, gets safer and safer and safer and safer. And it almost makes it easier for an organization at an organizational level to think, well, it's not going to happen to us. So it almost, I don't know, do you think that creates a mindset at an organizational level that it's almost harder to have an accident than it ever was? So the system, the more fail safes we have, the more systems that help save the day, potentially, does that impact organizations thinking, do you think?
Yeah. Oh, I think we're getting complacent as an industry, and I know that, and it's always when, like I said, when you're on a safety conference and you have all the safety professionals there, and everybody understands that we're all going like, oh yeah, this is the way you do it.
Mm,
But the fact is that as an industry, not only the organizations, the commercial organizations, whether it's the airlines, the manufacturers, or whoever, but also, the political oversight kind of thing, we kind of get complacent. I think there's this thing that safety seems to be a given, and it really is not. so lucky that we have a system that is so safe, because a lot of things happen every day, and a lot of people put a lot of effort in keeping it safe and averting whatever disasters. But
Yeah,
it someone I really appreciate once said, safety is like a marathon without a finish line. And you might have been, well, you might have been either safe or lucky yesterday, but whether you will be safe or rather lucky today, that is something that you will have very difficulty to judge. So you better make sure that you know your stuff and you really put every effort in there. And I think that is something that, with the industry coming out of COVID now, traffic picking up dramatically with, the whatever the challenges of the energy transition and the challenges of finding people to the industry. This gets, some people I think take it as a given, and it's really important that we understand that it's not a given. It's a daily effort that we need to do.
yeah, indeed. And interestingly, I've seen a lot of debates, particularly on LinkedIn over the last few weeks, and there was an interesting one this morning about the difference between, you might get, you might have a good reporting culture, but if all you do as an organization is look back at the events you've had and then use that effectively to say, well, we haven't had any serious events, so we're safe, rather than continually embracing, like you say, the need for a learning culture that looks at, all of the risks that you might be facing as an organization, or similarly from our perspective as an industry, is understanding from reporting. And this is where that's so important, is that if people don't feel comfortable to report, then there's a lot of context. People talk about this gap between work as we imagine and we design it and work as done. And
Mm.
I think the only way we can tell the difference between what we think is happening and what the real reality of the risk that, that every day pilots, engineers, controllers, whoever it is, are making these micro decisions that are solving these operational problems day to day. But the more of those we understand, hopefully the better we are, as you say, to learn and to improve the system over that kind of it is a marathon forever for all of us.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, people, organizations need to understand. What I always say is that you actually have a reporting system, whether it's good. Worst case, you have a reporting system which is happening at the bar. When the line engineers or the pilots or the crew. Oh, so that's my dog. Sorry. Um,
Excellent.
when they meet and they share. I know we share our the stupid things we've
Mm.
done. In cockpits, in after work. Because we have this culture, at least in the pilot community, to kind of exchange these
Yeah,
things.
people talk. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, but as a company, you need to have this inside, because that is where you learn. That is where you learn about your blind spots, and therefore, again, this trust is very important. And I think the mistake we're doing is that we believe that we have, as we have a just culture definition and we have a occurrence reporting regulation, we're an industry that is big on checklists and procedures. And, we forget the human side, with all its positive and negative, design
Mm.
flaws. And so culture is much more than that. And it's something that it's probably for some people kind of esoterical, because it needs to be lived. You need to believe in this. You need to have people that have empathy, and really need to like, dealing with people to create a culture, a real culture. And I think that is the next big challenge that we have, to make it credible beyond safety. Because I think if you say you have a just culture in reporting or a safety culture, but it's not reflected in the way or in the values your organization has as a whole, it's not going to be credible to your people. It's going to be some sort of subculture that, yeah, maybe if I report, nothing happens, but last time I forgot my parking thing, and human resources, they jumped on me. So I don't know if this culture is really, because, so it's really
I,
a whole thing.
I think that's so important, is it? It's kind of, as you start talking about the wider organizational culture, you might be talking about safety culture, what happens in the cockpit or as an engineer or whatever, but actually it's how that permeates through the whole organization's culture about how people treat each other. And you said there about the parking permit. There are so many day-to-day processes in an organization that if they're completely at odds with the safety culture that you're trying to set up, then that all has an impact.
Oh, absolutely. And I think beyond that, there's much more. I think, I think what we're missing a little bit is that, and I can imagine every CEO, when you start talking about safety culture and whatever, your safety culture declaration, inwardly, probably most of them rolls their eyes, because they go like, oh, yeah, okay, we know we're,
It's soft and fluffy, and
yeah,
it doesn't
yeah,
help me
yeah,
drive my business forward, and all
yeah,
of that.
and that is where it's wrong. I mean, when you look at culture, and there's been some really nice studies done over time, that you see that organizations that have a culture that is, that is adapted to their operation and their environment, in general, you see that these organizations, as a general rule, perform economically much better and are much more resilient, also economically, than organizations that don't have a culture that is adapted, or that don't try to steer that culture or create that culture. So I think there's a real incentive in looking beyond safety culture at organizational culture as a whole, because it will positively affect your safety culture, and it will certainly make it more credible if this concept of psychological safety and trust and understanding the values that the organization stands for. If that is understood, you can win on the whole line, and it's not about investing money. It's just about investing commitment and time. And so it's I think it's really something that we really need to look at.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting one. So there's two books I've been reading recently. There was a book called The Culture Code by a guy called Daniel Coyle, and he talks but uses examples like Pixar and the San Antonio Spurs and various things. The All Blacks rugby team. There's another book then called Belonging by Owen Eastwood that's kind of similar, and it's about how do you create the environment that enables people to perform to their best, which is fundamentally what we're trying to do, whether it's pilots, engineers, cabin crew, staff in the back in the office of the airline or the airport, whatever. That's what we're trying to achieve, really.
Oh yeah, and the culture code. It's funny because that is basically the book that I read it a couple of years ago, and that is
Mm.
where it started for me to make sense, because it was looking at all these organizations, and yeah, I remember there's the Navy SEALs are in there, and there's
Yeah, that's
football
right. Yeah.
teams, and there's like Pixar, there's there's airlines in there, and it really shows quite consistently that if you understand how the human works, and if you create the environment for the human to to thrive in that culture, you benefit from it. And that book actually I bought the book especially for, at the time, my accountable manager said, "Yeah, you need to read this. This is really, everything's in there." But it's a really nice introduction, and from there, you go on and read what Amy Edmondson has written
Mm.
on psychological safety, and there's so many things out there. I mean, Turn the Ship Around is a great one, which shows that even in this rigid structure like the military, you can create
Mm.
something that brings people together, and gives them the trust to step up and challenge the status quo. So, I mean, it's there for the taking. I think it's just, we cannot regulate it, but I think we can, as an industry, come together and create a mindset that encourages that.
And I think particularly at a time where we know there are shortages of staff. We're trying to recruit new people into the industry. I think this is probably one of the most challenging times. Certainly, I mean, I've been in aviation 30 years, and I've never seen a situation where it's so hard to recruit people into the industry. And I think this is where, if we can show to people who aren't in the industry that aviation has good organizations that they want to come and work for, if nothing else, that in itself at a safety level is a risk, but actually just a risk to us being able to sustain the industry over the coming years, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have an issue. I think when I look back at the beginning of the summer season, we were up to 90% of traffic, and we
Mm.
were still missing 20% of workforce. yeah, and it's, I mean, kids today, they have, they have tons of other avenues which are at least as sexy as, if who wants to be an airline pilot if they can be whatever, Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, or whoever. But I think we have an issue. And then after COVID, people have realized that, again, is it just, do I go to work to put food on the table, or do I need something deeper, a deeper connection to what I do? And I think all of these things are potentially very
Yeah.
positive aspects that you can use to create a thriving industry.
Yeah, I think that's the thing you were talking earlier about creating that clear purpose around it's not just I come to work to do a thing. I'm there because I'm part of an industry that does something bigger than just my day-to-day job and all of those things. I think that in itself, kind of creating that feeling in the industry is such an important thing as much as the individual parts of it. So yeah, well that was hopefully that was a great, really interesting discussion and people kind of could see some ideas. If you could have kind of one wish that would improve, or one thing that you maybe would say to an organization kind of trying to go on a journey to improve their just culture, if there was one thing they needed to do to start that journey, what would that be? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot here.
Oh yeah, well, I think that would be to really reflect on what kind of organization they want to be for for their customers, for their shareholders, for all of their stakeholders, which
Mm,
includes the staff, and then go on a journey where you interest yourself in what is it your people do well, what is it you people want to achieve, and how do you take them with you to achieve that overarching goal, which makes also sense to them. And I think that is part of culture. And I think if you create that culture as an organization, especially in such a dynamic, sometimes difficult environment as the airline industry, you can, and you have really the potential to either be a real safe company, because it's going to influence your safety positively, and it's going to influence the rest of your business as well. And when you look, Herb Keller did it with Southwest, and another person I really admire, although this was in the 1980s, was Jan Carlsen with SAS, who
mm.
brought in this kind of spirit. And for the years he was there, it really changed SAS from a lagging, slow state carrier to something really dynamic. And it's got, I think it's called, I don't know what the book's called. It's, I'll have to find out. But Jan Carlsen, he did it, and it works for airlines. And the wish I would have is that in the industry we'd come together, the people with this mindset, that we try to come up with a concept that can bring the industry further, and that we convince also the people that have the money in the industry, our CEOs, that this is actually an endeavor that is worth investing the commitment and investing the time for your people. And I think it will change. It has the potential to affect change in the industry.
So I just checked that the Moments of Truth, the book's called,
Oh
and
yeah,
then can
absolutely. That's it. Yeah.
I managed to quickly Google it there while you were talking.
You're
So
multiting is
I know,
something
easy,
yeah, that's why we
excellent,
have co-pilots. It's because we're so bad
exactly,
at
yeah, exactly.
multitasking.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for your time. It was great. Look forward to seeing you in person again soon. And yeah, thanks to everybody for listening. Hopefully you found it useful. And yeah, huge thanks to you, Paul, for joining us for the discussion. Thanks
Thank you,
very
John.
much.
Thank you,
Thanks.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.